Have you ever wondered what it might be like to experience the magic of Hogwarts from a perspective rarely seen? To walk its hallowed halls not as a student or professor, but as one of the countless magical beings who work tirelessly behind the scenes to keep the castle running. Tonight, we invite you to step into the softly clicking footsteps of a Hogwarts house elf, to see the world through their large, luminous eyes, to feel the weight of their devotion, and to uncover the hidden currents of magic that flow just beneath the surface of everyday life. Wherever you are in the world right now, and whatever hour has drawn you to this moment of rest and wonder, we'd love to know, where are you joining us from tonight, and what time does your journey into peace begin? Let us know in the comments below. It's always so special to feel connected across distances through the shared love of this magical world. In the quiet hours before dawn, while most of Hogwarts still sleeps, a young house elf named Wispy is already hard at work. Her small, careful hands polish the silver trophies in the trophy room until they shine like captured moonlight, each one telling a story of bravery, skill, or service. But if you look closely into her wide, earnest eyes, you'll see more than just pride in a job well done. You'll catch a flicker of worry, a shadow of unease. Just days ago, Headmaster Dumbledore himself spoke of strange and growing disturbances in the castle's lower corridors, whispers of magic behaving oddly, of protections weakening, of something ancient and restless stirring in the dark. For a house elf like Wispy, whose very purpose is woven into the safety and order of Hogwarts, the thought of unseen dangers is more than unsettling. It's a call to something deeper than duty. This is where our story begins, not with wands raised or battles cried, but with the quiet, determined heart of a being often overlooked. Wispy knows that even the smallest lapse in her attention could have consequences far beyond a tarnished trophy or dusty corridor. The world she loves, the home she serves, might depend on how she responds to the signs others might miss. So as she runs her cloth over the engraved name on a gleaming cup, she isn't just cleaning. She's listening, she's feeling, she's preparing, and without yet knowing it, she is stepping onto a path that will test her loyalty, courage, and love for Hogwarts in ways she never imagined. With the trophies gleaming behind her, Wispy's work is far from over. A soft snap of her fingers is all it takes, and the Gryffindor common room begins to put itself in order. Cushions on the sofas plump themselves with a gentle sigh. Stray textbooks float back to neat stacks on tables, and the ashes in the grand fireplace swirl into a tidy pile. It's a familiar dance of domestic magic, one she's performed countless times, but today the rhythm feels off. As she moves toward the portrait hole, a sudden, unexpected shiver runs through her small frame. It's not the usual drafty chill of the stone castle. This is something different. It's a cold that seems to seep into the air itself, a faint, eerie sensation that makes the very hairs on her arms stand up. The torches bracketed on the wall near by don't just gutter in a passing breeze. They flicker and dim, as if the light itself is struggling against a heavy, invisible weight. Their flames burning low and blue for a heart-stopping moment before flaring back to life. This is no ordinary occurrence. This subtle wrongness in the air, this whisper of cold where there should be warmth, feels deeply unnatural. It's a crack in the seamless tapestry of Hogwarts magic, a single note played out of tune in the castle's ancient, humming song. And in that instant, Headmaster Dumbledore's warning about disturbances in the lower corridors echoes in her mind with terrifying clarity. What if these anomalies aren't confined to the dungeons? What if this unsettling chill is just the beginning, a tendril of something larger and more dangerous, creeping upward into the heart of the school, into the spaces where students laugh and study and sleep? The weight of her duty, usually a comfortable blanket of purpose, now feels like a heavy chain. To ignore this sign, to simply continue her cleaning and pretend she didn't feel it, would be to fail in her most sacred task, protecting the home she loves and the witches and wizards within it. So she makes a choice, a quiet, internal decision that marks a turning point. The fear is still there, a tight knot in her chest, but it is now overruled by something stronger, a fierce, protective curiosity. She will finish her assigned duties with unwavering precision, leaving no trace of her unease for a student to stumble upon. But once every pillow is plumped and every book is shelved, she will return. She will investigate this chill, this flickering light, and follow the trail of this magical unease wherever it leads. The stakes are no longer abstract. They are as real as the stone floor beneath her feet. The peril is no longer a distant rumor. It is a cold breath on the back of her neck, and she is the only one who felt it. The students, all of them, from the first years to the 7th years, are counting on her without even knowing it. And that is a responsibility she will cannot ignore. The warmth and clamor of the Hogwarts kitchens is a welcome comfort after the unsettling chill of the common room. Here, the air is thick with the rich, buttery scent of baking bread and the sweet, spiced aroma of pumpkin, a symphony of familiar sounds replacing the ominous silence, the cheerful crackle of multiple fires, the gentle clatter of copper pots, and the busy murmur of over 100 house elves, all working in perfect, harmonious sync. Wispy quickly finds her place among them, her small hands deftly rolling out pastry dough for the pumpkin pasties that are a student favorite. The rhythmic, repetitive motion is soothing, a return to the normal order of things, and for a few precious moments, the worry that had taken root in her chest begins to loosen its grip. But even in this haven of warmth and light, a new thread of unease begins to weave itself into the tapestry of the day. As she works beside an older elf named Bippy, carefully spooning filling onto circles of dough, her large, sensitive ears twitch, catching a whispered conversation from a nearby workstation. Two elves are discussing the inventory, their voices hushed and laced with a confusion that is entirely out of place here. Gone, another whole crate of potatoes, just vanished, one mutters, shaking his head. And the pickled herring from yesterday, the other adds, wringing her apron in her hands. Not a scale left behind. It makes no sense. Food in Hogwarts simply does not disappear. It is magically replenished, protected by ancient enchantments of hospitality and abundance. For supplies to go missing is not just odd. It's a violation of the castle's very nature, a crack in its foundational magic. Then, another whisper, this one even lower and tinged with genuine fear. It's the noises, I tells you, from down below, all that scraping and breathing in the dark. The word breathing is uttered with such palpable dread that Wispy feels a fresh shiver run down her spine, completely unrelated to the cold she felt upstairs. The cellar, a vast, dimly lit space used for storing non-perishables and older, less frequently used kitchen equipment, has always been a part of the castle she accepted without question. Now it suddenly feels like a separate, shadowy realm, a place where the rules of Hogwarts might not fully apply. The missing food, the strange noises. It can't be a coincidence, not with the headmaster's warning and the magical chill she just witnessed. These aren't isolated problems. They are pieces of a larger, more frightening puzzle. A hush falls over the little group as they notice Wispy listening. Their large eyes dart away, suddenly very interested in their tasks. A clear sign that they are afraid of being accused of gossiping, or worse, of speaking of things they feel are beyond their station to question. The unspoken rule is to keep your head down, do your job, and not draw attention to mysteries that are surely for wizards to solve. But Wispy is already stepping onto a different path. She looks at their worried faces, at the way their ears droop with a mixture of confusion and fear, and she knows that this silence, this obedience, is a luxury they can no longer afford. If something is amiss in the cellar, it is their domain, their responsibility. It is a threat to the heart of the home they are sworn to protect. Before she can second-guess the impulse, she hears her own voice, small but surprisingly steady, break the tense silence. "I will go," she says. "I will check the cellar." The other elves look at her, their expressions a mixture of shock and relief. One of them gestures weakly to her hands, which are indeed trembling slightly, betraying the courage it took to make the offer. She curls them into determined fists, pressing them against the rough fabric of her pillowcase tunic. The fear is real, a cold knot in her stomach, but it is now completely overshadowed by a burgeoning sense of purpose. This isn't just about investigating a noise. It's about following the trail of the disturbance, about being proactive in the defense of her home. By volunteering, she isn't just easing the worries of her fellow elves. She is actively choosing to dive deeper into the mystery, accepting that the safety of the castle might very well depend on the courage found in its smallest, most humble inhabitants. This decision, made between sacks of flour and simmering cauldrons, irrevocably deepens her involvement, transforming her from a bystander into a central player in whatever is unfolding within the walls of Hogwarts. The stone steps leading down to the cellar are cool and worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, each one taking Wispy further from the comforting warmth and noise of the kitchens and deeper into a silence that feels thick and heavy. The air changes with every step, losing the scent of baking and gaining the damp, earthy smell of old stone and stored roots. A single, floating orb of light bobs ahead of her, a simple household charm that casts long, dancing shadows against the walls, making sacks of grain and stacks of barrels look like hulking, silent creatures in the dimness. Her own breathing sounds too loud in the quiet, and she moves with a careful, almost instinctual stealth, her large ears swiveling to catch any sound beyond the frantic beating of her own heart. This is the underbelly of the castle she serves, a place of practical storage, yet now it feels charged with a significance she can't quite name. She moves toward the back wall, where the older pickling barrels are stored, the ones that aren't used as often. This is where the other elves said the noises were loudest. At first, everything seems perfectly normal, just as it has always been. There are the barrels, there are the crates, there is the dusty floor. But as her magical light drifts over a particular stack of older, slightly rotting casks, she notices something odd. The pattern of the shadows behind them isn't right. It's too deep, too black, suggesting an emptiness that shouldn't be there. Summoning every ounce of her courage, she reaches out her small hands and, with a grunt of effort, pushes one of the heavier barrels aside just a few inches. The scraping sound it makes against the stone floor is unnervingly loud in the silence, and that's when she sees it. Not a wall, but an opening, a dark, yawning space that had been completely concealed behind the stack. Her light floats into the gap, and what it reveals steals the breath from her lungs. It's not a natural crack or a simple storage nook. It is a corridor, narrow and perfectly square, hewn from the bedrock upon which Hogwarts was built. And along its walls, etched into the stone itself, are lines of symbols. They are ancient, angular runes, none of which she recognizes from the snippets of wizard texts she's seen while cleaning. They don't look like any protective or household charms she knows, and they are glowing, not with a bright, welcoming light, but with a faint, pulsating, silvery luminescence, like dormant embers waiting for a breath of wind to flare back to life. This is not part of any map or plan of the castle she has ever heard discussed. This is a secret, a forgotten, magical secret. In that moment, the weight of the castle above her feels immense, 1,000 years of history and mystery pressing down. Her heart hammers against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of both terror and awe. This hidden passage, with its mysterious, glowing script, is undoubtedly connected to everything: the headmaster's warning, the chilling magical disturbances, the missing supplies, the strange noises. It's a thread, and if she pulls on it, she might unravel the entire mystery. But that thought is followed immediately by a cold wave of fear. Should she explore this alone? The very idea makes her tremble. She is just one small house elf. What if there are dangers down there that she cannot possibly face by herself? What if she becomes lost in a labyrinth of forgotten tunnels? Her absence just another mystery for the other elves to whisper about. Yet, the thought of going for help is almost equally frightening. Involving others, especially wizards, means drawing attention. It means potentially breaking rules, revealing a secret she was never meant to find, and facing questions she cannot answer. Would she be punished for discovering it? Would she be blamed for the disturbances, accused of meddling in things beyond her station? The proud, ancient magic humming from those runes feels solemn and serious, not meant for the eyes of a lowly house elf. To speak of it feels like a betrayal of the castle's trust. This is her home, and its secrets are its own to keep. But what if the secret is a threat? What if whatever is causing the disturbances is hidden down that very corridor, growing stronger while she hesitates? The conflict is a storm inside her, duty and fear warring for control. But as she stands at the threshold, the faint silver light of the runes reflecting in her wide, worried eyes, one feeling rises above all others: a fierce, unwavering determination to protect. Hogwarts is not just a castle, it is her world, her family, her reason for being. She cannot turn away from a threat to it, no matter how scared she is. The potential consequences of seeking help feel distant compared to the immediate, visceral need to know what lies in that darkness. With a final, steadying breath that does little to calm her racing heart, Wispy makes her choice. She will not wait. She will not fetch anyone. She takes a small, hesitant step forward, then another, crossing the threshold from the known world of the cellar into the unknown gloom of the passage. The air shifts around her, becoming older, cooler, and thick, with the scent of undisturbed time and potent, sleeping magic. The tension isn't just escalating, it is solidifying, wrapping around her like a cloak, as she willingly walks deeper into the heart of the mystery, guided only by her dimming light and a love for her home that is stronger than any fear. The passage stretches before her, a narrow throat of darkness, swallowed by the deep, silent earth beneath the castle. The only light comes from the faint, pulsating glow of the ancient runes etched into the walls, their silvery luminescence casting just enough light to see a few feet ahead. The air is cool and incredibly still, thick with the dust of centuries and the heavy, humming weight of dormant magic. Wispy moves forward slowly, one small, hesitant step at a time, her large ears straining against the profound quiet, listening for anything, a scrape, a breath, the source of the disturbances that led her here. But there is only the sound of her own pattering heart and the soft shuffle of her feet on the stone. She feels incredibly small, a single, tiny creature navigating a vein of the castle's deepest, most secret history. Just as she begins to wonder if the corridor simply goes on forever, the passage opens abruptly into a wider, circular space, like a small, forgotten chamber. And there, hovering a few inches above the center of the floor, is a sight that makes her freeze in her tracks. It is a ghost, translucent and pearly white, drifting in a slow, melancholy circle. But this is no terrifying specter. He is dressed in the elaborate, ruffled clothing of a bygone era, and his head is tilted at a dreadful, unfortunate angle, attached to his neck by merely a thin strip of ghostly flesh. It is Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, nearly headless Nick of Gryffindor Tower. He seems to be muttering to himself, practicing a speech perhaps, and doesn't notice her at first, his form shimmering in the gloom. Wispy lets out a small, involuntary squeak of surprise, and the sound, though tiny, echoes in the chamber. The ghost stops his circling and turns, his mournful eyes widening in astonishment at the sight of a house elf in such a place. "Good heavens," he exclaims, his voice a hollow, echoing whisper that seems to come from every direction at once. A living soul, a house elf. "Down here, my dear lady, you are far, far from the buttered dishes and dusting rags. What, pray tell, brings you to this most forgotten antechamber of history?" He floats a little closer, not with menace, but with a keen, curious interest. Wispy, her initial fright subsiding into a nervous awe, finds her voice. She explains in a rush of whispered words about the magical chill, the missing food, the strange noises, and her discovery of the hidden passage, her large eyes earnest and pleading for understanding. Nearly headless Nick listens, his translucent face growing graver with each revelation. He nods slowly, a movement that makes his head wobble precariously. "Ah, yes, the stirrings. I have felt them too," he says, his tone becoming conspiratorial. "We all have, those of us who are sensitive to the older rhythms of this castle. The magic here is not just old, my dear. It is foundational. It is the mortar between these very stones." He gestures around the chamber with a dramatic sweep of his arm. "These runes, you see, are a language all but lost, charms of protection and stability laid by the founders themselves. For them to glow so, it speaks of a great imbalance." He leans in closer, his chilly, non-corporeal presence causing Wispy to shiver. There are tales, whispered in the corners where portraits sleep and ghosts congregate, of a time when the castle's heart beat erratically, It is happening again. Something has been disturbed, awakened. He studies her for a long moment, taking in her determined expression despite her obvious fear. Your courage is commendable, little one. To seek the source of this disquiet shows a loyalty that would make Helga Huffle puff herself smile. He straightens up as much as a nearly headless man can. I believe I may know of one who can provide more specific guidance. The Grey Lady, the ghost of Ravenclaw Tower, is perhaps the most knowledgeable of us all when it comes to the castle's ancient secrets and lost lore. Her memory is long, and her wisdom is deep. She may know what these runes signify and what artifact or event could be causing them to stir so. The suggestion hangs in the air between them, a possible next step on the path. But for Wispy, it also presents a new dilemma. Seeking out a ghost, especially one as reclusive and dignified as the Grey Lady, feels like a tremendous overstep. Ghosts are for witches and wizards to converse with, not for house elves to bother with questions. It feels like breaking an unspoken rule, venturing far outside the boundaries of her designated role. What if the Grey Lady is offended? What if she refuses to speak to her, or worse, reports her impertinence to a professor? The fear of punishment, of being seen as a meddler in affairs too grand for her, is a cold, familiar weight in her stomach. For a heartbeat, she considers retreating, going back to the kitchens and pretending she never found this passage, never had this conversation. But then she looks back down the dark corridor from which she came, and she thinks of the chilling wrongness in the Gryffindor common room, of the frightened whispers in the kitchens about scraping noises and missing food. This isn't about rules or station anymore. This is about the castle itself, her dedication to Hogwarts, a love so deep it is woven into her very being, rises up, solid and unshakable, pushing the fear aside. The mystery must be solved. The balance must be restored. She cannot do that alone, and nearly headless Nick has offered her a key. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she looks up at the ghost and gives a firm, decisive nod. I will speak with her, she says, her voice barely a whisper, but filled with a newfound resolve. This agreement is more than just accepting advice. It is an active choice to engage with the castle's most ancient inhabitants, to tap into a stream of history and knowledge that exists parallel to the daily life of students and professors. She is no longer just cleaning up a mess. She is connecting with the very soul of Hogwarts, and in doing so, she deepens her own resolve to protect it, no matter the cost. Leaving the comforting, if somber, presence of nearly headless Nick behind, Wispy navigates the maze of moving staircases and familiar corridors with a new sense of purpose. The journey to the Ravenclaw common room feels longer than usual, each step taking her further from the world of scrubbing and polishing and deeper into the realm of whispered secrets and ancient magic. She finds the entrance, a magnificent door without a knob or keyhole, but with a polished bronze eagle knocker in its center. Even at this quiet hour, she can sense the intellectual energy humming from within, a place dedicated to wit and learning that feels both intimidating and awe-inspiring. And there, gliding slowly along the corridor, as if lost in a centuries-old thought, is the ghost she seeks. The Grey Lady is ethereal and pale, her expression one of profound, timeless sadness, her beauty undimmed by the years. She seems almost a part of the castle's very atmosphere, a wisp of memory and knowledge given form. Wispy's courage, which had felt so solid underground, suddenly wavers. Approaching this regal, sorrowful specter feels like an immense intrusion. She is a creature of the kitchens and common rooms, of practical magic and simple duties. The Grey Lady is a relic of Hogwarts' most noble past, a keeper of riddles and lost lore. What right does a house elf have to demand her attention? For a long moment, Wispy simply stands frozen, watching the ghost drift, wrestling with the urge to turn and flee back to the safety of known chores. But then she remembers the cold, flickering torches. She remembers the fear in the other elves' eyes. She remembers the glowing, pulsating runes in the dark, a silent scream from the castle's very foundations. Clutching the worn fabric of her pillowcase, she takes a small, shuffling step forward, then another, until she is standing timidly in the ghost's path. "My lady," Wispy's voice is little more than a squeak, so soft it is almost swallowed by the silent corridor. The Grey Lady pauses her slow glide and looks down, her dark, hollow eyes focusing on the small elf with a look of mild, distant curiosity, as if noticing a particularly interesting beetle on the stone floor. She does not speak, only waits, her silence more daunting than any question. Swallowing her terror, Wispy begins to explain, her words tumbling out in a rushed, respectful whisper. She speaks of the hidden passage, describes the angular, glowing runes as best she can, and mentions her conversation with Sir Nicholas. She does not presume to ask for help directly. Instead, she frames it as a report, a humble servant bringing a concerning observation to the attention of a wiser, ancient resident of the castle. She finishes by wringing her hands, her large, luminous eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope, awaiting judgment. The Grey Lady's expression shifts from curiosity to something deeper, a flicker of recognition, and then concern in her ghostly features. She is silent for so long that Wispy begins to fear she has indeed overstepped and will simply be ignored. But then the ghost speaks, her voice like the sound of wind, sighing through high, lonely towers, clear and cold, and filled with an immense weight of knowledge. "You describe the foundational sigils," she says, each word measured and precise. "They are not merely markings, they are binding charms, woven into the castle's stone by Rowena Ravenclaw herself. They are part of a great lattice of magic that stabilizes the very air you breathe, that keeps the staircases moving in their ordained patterns, that ensures the enchantments of protection and abundance never fade." She drifts a little closer, and the air around Wispy grows chill. For them to glow is not a sign of awakening power, little elf. It is a symptom of decay. It means the charms are straining, weakening. They are like a web that has lost its anchor points, trembling because a vital counterweight has been removed. Wispy listens, her heart sinking. The situation is far more serious than she had even imagined. This isn't just a strange occurrence. It is an unraveling of the very magic that holds her home together. "A counterweight, my lady," she whispers, barely daring to ask. The Grey Lady's gaze seems to look through her, into the distant past. There is an artifact. A small, unassuming thing to the untrained eye, but potent. An amulet of celestial bronze and moonstone, charged with a fragment of each founder's magic. It was created as a keystone, a focal point for the castle's protective lattice. It was never meant to be moved from its designated resting place, a secret chamber known only to a few. A profound sadness touches her voice, Its absence would cause precisely the disturbances you describe: the wild magic, the cold spots, the failing protections. The castle is becoming unmoored. Then, the ghost's piercing eyes focus intently on Wispy once more. The last known treatise on its creation, its nature, and its precise original location was a journal kept by my mother. That journal, along with other texts on the castle's most ancient magic, was deemed too dangerous for general study. For the safety of all, it was moved long ago. She pauses, and the silence that follows is heavy with implication. It resides now in the restricted section of the library. The words hang in the air between them, final and terrifying. The restricted section. Those words carry a weight every magical being understands. It is a place of forbidden knowledge, protected by spells and locks. A domain strictly off limits to students, and most certainly to house elves. To enter there is not just breaking a rule, it is a direct defiance of the school's most stringent boundaries. The internal conflict that tears through Wispy is immediate and visceral. On one side is a lifetime of conditioning, a deeply ingrained instinct for obedience. The rules are not just suggestions, they are the framework of her existence. They keep order, they keep her safe. The very thought of willingly crossing that line, of sneaking into a forbidden area, sends a jolt of pure panic through her. She imagines the disappointment on Professor McGonagal's face, the stern judgment of the headmaster, the shame it would bring not just on her, but on all the house elves. Her role is to serve and maintain, not to trespass and investigate. But pushing against that fear is a duty so profound, it feels like a physical force. This is no longer about curiosity, or even just solving a mystery. The Grey Lady has painted a picture of a castle, slowly coming undone at its magical seams. The safety of every student, every teacher, every living soul within these walls is now implicitly hanging in the balance. The chilling wrongness she felt, the missing food, the animated armor, these are just the beginning. If the amulet is not found and restored, what comes next? Could a staircase simply stop moving? Could the protective enchantments that keep out dark creatures fail entirely? The potential for catastrophe is limitless. Her obedience to the rules, which has always been her guiding star, now feels like a chain that could lead to the downfall of everything she holds dear. The conflict is no longer a simple choice. It is a war between her defined purpose and her love for her home, and the fate of Hogwarts itself rests on which side wins. The library at night is a different world altogether. A vast, silent cavern where knowledge sleeps on endless shelves, and the only light comes from the slivers of moonlight filtering through the high, arched windows, painting silver stripes on the dark wooden floors. During the day, this place is a gentle hum of turning pages and whispered conversations. But now, in the deep quiet of the late hours, it feels watchful, almost alive with the weight of all the secrets it holds. Wispy stands just inside the enormous double doors, her small form swallowed by the sheer scale of the room. The air smells of old parchment, leather bindings, and the faint, ozone-like tang of powerful magic lying dormant. Ahead, a velvet rope, strung between two brass poles, marks the boundary she has never, in all her years of service, even considered crossing: the entrance to the restricted section. Just looking at it makes her feel a cold prickle of dread along her spine. This is a line she was never meant to cross, but the memory of the Grey Lady's words, the image of the castle's magic, trembling like a plucked harp string on the verge of snapping, is a fire in her mind, burning away the fear of punishment. She has to know, she has to find that book. Closing her large eyes for a moment, she focuses inward on the unique, instinctual magic that flows through every house elf. It isn't wand work or learned incantations. It is a magic of intent, of need, of a deep, symbiotic connection to the places they serve. She doesn't need to speak a spell. Instead, she pours all her concentration into a single, desperate desire. Don't be seen. Become part of the silence. Become a shadow among shadows. A strange, cool sensation washes over her, starting from the tips of her ears and flowing down to her toes, like being dipped in cool, dark water. When she opens her eyes, the world looks different. The colors are muted, the edges softer, as if she is viewing everything from the bottom of a deep, still pond. She has woven herself into the very darkness of the room. She moves then, a small, silent blur against the deeper black of the bookshelves. She slips under the velvet rope, as if it isn't even there, her bare feet making no sound on the polished floor. The restricted section feels different from the rest of the library, older, denser. The magic here isn't sleeping, it is watchful. She can feel it pressing against her own, a low, humming vibration that seems to test her purpose. The books themselves are bound in strange materials, what looks like scaled skin, weathered wood, and tarnished metal. And some are even locked shut with clasps that look like tiny, sleeping jaws. Her heart hammers against her ribs, a frantic, terrified drumbeat that feels impossibly loud in the utter silence. But her magic holds, a fragile cloak of shadows, keeping her hidden from whatever guardians might be waiting. She doesn't know where to begin. The shelves tower over her, a labyrinth of forbidden knowledge. She lets her intuition guide her, her small hand trailing over the spines of the books, feeling the thrum of different magics, some dark and cold, others buzzing with chaotic energy. And then her fingers brush against a binding that feels different. It is made of a simple, age-darkened leather, unadorned and without a title, but it hums with a deep, resonant, and strangely familiar warmth. It feels like the castle itself, like the stones of the corridors and the hearths of the common rooms. Carefully, she pulls it from its place. It is heavier than it looks, and the cover is embossed with a single symbol, a 4-part design intertwining a badger, a snake, an eagle, and a lion, the mark of the Hogwarts founders. Crouching in a pool of deep shadow between two shelves, she opens the book. The pages are crackly with age, the ink faded to a rusty brown, but the illustrations are clear, intricate diagrams of the castle's foundation stones, charts of ley lines, and pages filled with the same angular runes she saw glowing in the hidden passage. Her large eyes scan the elegant script, written in a formal, old-fashioned hand, and she reads the story of the Amulet of Harmony. It was not created by one founder, but by all 4 together, each pouring a piece of their own core magic. Their courage, their cunning, their wisdom, and their loyalty into a single focal point made of celestial bronze and a single, perfectly clear moonstone. This amulet was never a weapon or a tool for personal power. It was an anchor, a keystone. It was placed at the very magical heart of Hogwarts, its sole purpose to stabilize the immense and complex web of enchantments that allow the castle to function. The ever-shifting staircases, the self-refilling food platters, the protective barriers that keep out dark forces, the very air of safety and possibility that every student feels when they walk through its doors. A cold wave of understanding washes over her as she reads on. The book describes the symptoms of its absence in chilling detail. Pockets of wild, unpredictable magic, protective charms failing, temperatures fluctuating unnaturally, and even the very structure of the castle becoming unstable over time. It is a perfect description of everything that has been happening, but then her blood runs cold. The final passage on the amulet is a warning, written in larger, bolder script, as if the author wanted to shout across the centuries. The keystone is protected not by lock and key, but by sentinels of ancient magic, guardians bound to its place of rest. They are not evil, but they are unwavering. They will test the worth of any who would approach, and they will defend the balance against any who would seek to disturb it, whether their intent be pure or foul. The stakes, which had already felt terrifyingly high, now plummet to a depth she can barely comprehend. This is no longer just about fixing a magical hiccup or finding a lost trinket. The entire functional magic of Hogwarts is on the verge of a cascading collapse. It could start small, a vanishing staircase, a poisoned pumpkin juice jug, but it could end with the complete failure of the enchantments that keep everyone safe from the darker things that exist in the world beyond these walls. And to prevent that, she must not only find this incredibly powerful and lost object, but she must also somehow prove her worth to magical guardians of unknown power and intention. The weight of it all presses down on her, a physical sensation that makes it hard to breathe. Failure is not an option. It never was. But now she knows the terrifying, magnificent truth of what is truly at risk. Everything. Leaving the oppressive silence of the restricted section feels like breaking the surface after a deep dive. The familiar air of the Hogwarts corridors, a sweet relief despite the heavy new knowledge she carries. The book's final warning echoes in her mind, guardians, sentinels of ancient magic, transforming her mission from a desperate search into a perilous quest. She is just one small elf. The idea of facing such power alone is not just frightening, it is a certain path to failure. She needs help, but who can she possibly turn to? The professors would surely listen, but involving them means exposing the house elves' secret investigations. They're trespassing in forbidden areas, and likely getting her and her friends into terrible trouble. She needs guidance from someone who understands loyalty, community, and the quiet strength found in unity. Her feet, almost of their own accord, carry her away from the main thoroughfares, down a quieter, sun-drenched corridor on the third floor, to a place that has always felt like a sanctuary of warmth and fairness. There, in a gilded frame, is a portrait of Helga Hufflepuff. Unlike some of the more restless or snoozing portraits, she is often depicted tending to a magical plant, or humming softly as she stirs a large, steaming cauldron, her expression one of kind, unwavering patience. She looks up as Wispy approaches, her painted eyes crinkling at the corners with a gentle curiosity. Wispy, her voice trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and urgency, pours out her story. She doesn't hold back. She speaks of the chilling magic, the hidden runes, the terrifying book, and the monumental task of finding the Amulet of Harmony before the castle's magic unravels completely. She confesses her fear, her feeling of being impossibly small against such a vast and ancient problem. Helga Hufflepuff listens with her full attention, her kind face growing graver with each revelation. She places her wooden spoon down carefully, her gaze fixed on the small, desperate elf. When Wispy finishes, the founder is silent for a long moment, not in judgment, but in deep thought. "You carry a great weight for one so small, little friend," she says finally, her voice a warm, soothing murmur that feels like a blanket on a cold night. "But you misunderstand the nature of your strength. You are not just one elf. You are part of a tapestry, a web of magic that is older and more powerful than any single spell in that book." She leans forward in her frame, her expression intense. "The magic you and your kin wield, it is not the wand waving of wizards. It is a magic of unity, of shared purpose. It is the magic of the hearth and the home, and it is potent beyond measure when woven together. You must not face this alone. To restore a keystone built on the unity of the founders, you must call upon the unity of your own people." The advice is a revelation. Wispy had been thinking in terms of individual bravery, of a single hero on a secret mission. Helga Hufflepuff is telling her to think like a Hufflepuff, to think like a community. The idea is both brilliant and terrifying. Gathering other elves means sharing the secret, implicating them in this rule-breaking, dangerous endeavor. The risks wouldn't just be hers alone anymore. They would be multiplied with every elf she confides in. If they are discovered, it wouldn't be just one house elf facing punishment. It could be many. They could be reprimanded, their trust with the school damaged, or even, she can't bear to think of it, dismissed. The very thought sends a fresh wave of cold dread through her. She would be responsible for that. The weight of that potential consequence feels heavier than the entire book from the restricted section. Yet, the founder's words ring with a truth she cannot deny. The magic she feels when all the elves work together in the kitchens. The seamless, wordless coordination. The way a feast appears as if from a single mind. That is a power unto itself. It is a different kind of magic, a collective force. Perhaps it is the only kind of magic strong enough to appease the ancient guardians of the Amulet, beings who would value a pure, selfless heart and a unified purpose over any display of individual power. The safety of Hogwarts is too important for her pride or her fear to get in the way. Steeling herself, she thanks the portrait with a deep, respectful bow, her mind already racing, sorting through the faces of her fellow elves, deciding who she can trust with the fate of their home. She finds them in the quiet hour after dinner, when the kitchens are between the rush of the evening meal and the preparation for the next day's breakfast. She gathers 3 elves she has known since her first day at Hogwarts. Wispy, with his vast knowledge of the castle's every pantry and cupboard. Tilly, whose small size belied a nimble cleverness and an uncanny ability to remain unseen when she wished. And Mimsy, the oldest of them, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes holding the wisdom of countless years of service. In a hushed corner, surrounded by the comforting scent of baking bread, Wispy tells them everything. She shows them the worried crease in her brow, the earnest fear in her eyes, and she speaks not as a leader giving orders, but as a friend asking for help. She explains the amulet, the crumbling magic, the very real possibility that the home they have dedicated their lives to could slowly fall apart. She expects hesitation. She expects fear. What she receives is an immediate, fierce solidarity. Wispy's ears droop with concern, but he nods firmly. If the castle is sick, we must help it get better. It is our home too. Tilly, usually so quiet, speaks up with a determined gleam in her eye. I am very good at not being seen. I can help us go where we need to. Old Mimsy places a gnarled, comforting hand on Wispy's arm. The old magic respects the old ways, she says, her voice raspy but strong. The magic of many hearts, working as one, is a powerful thing. We will do this together. Their agreement is not given lightly. She can see the same understanding of the risks reflected in their large eyes. They know what they are signing up for. But their loyalty to Hogwarts and their trust in Wispy overrules every caution. In that moment, standing with her small circle of friends in the warm, dim light of the kitchens, Wispy feels a shift within herself. The lonely, terrifying burden she has been carrying is now shared, distributed across 4 pairs of shoulders. It doesn't feel lighter, precisely, but it feels manageable for the first time. Her resolve hardens into something stronger, something unbreakable, forged in the fire of their collective courage. They are a team now, a secret alliance. But with that strength comes a chilling new dimension to the danger. Their actions are no longer those of a single, rogue elf acting on a desperate impulse. They are now a coordinated effort. Every step they take together, every whispered conversation, every foray into forbidden parts of the castle, multiplies the chances of being seen, of being overheard, of leaving a trace. They must now worry not only about ancient magical guardians and the unraveling fabric of the castle's enchantments, but also about the very real, very present authority figures who walk the halls: prefects, professors, and especially the ever-watchful Argus Filch and his cat. Their success now depends on a perfect, silent harmony, and their failure could mean exposure and consequences that would ripple through the entire community of Hogwarts house elves, shattering the peaceful, hidden order they have maintained for centuries. The search for clues leads the small band of house elves deeper into the castle's underbelly, to the cold, echoing stone corridors that skirt the Slytherin dungeons. This part of Hogwarts feels ancient and watchful, the air heavy with damp and the lingering resonance of centuries of potent spellcraft. The usual torchlight seems weaker here, casting long, dancing shadows that twist and writhe at the edge of vision, making every ordinary suit of armor standing guard against the walls look like a silent, menacing sentinel. Wispy, with Bippy, Tilly, and old Mimsy close behind, moves with a careful, practiced stealth, their large eyes scanning every crack in the stone, every dusty alcove, for any sign of the amulet's hiding place or the magical instability they now know to look for. They are a team, a unit, their shared purpose a quiet hum between them, but the oppressive atmosphere of the dungeons presses in, a constant reminder of the gravity of their task. It begins not with a sound, but with a feeling, a sudden, violent shift in the very texture of the air around them. The magic, usually a steady, humming current woven into the castle's stones, doesn't just flicker this time, it ruptures. A silent, concussive wave of raw, untamed power erupts from a point somewhere ahead of them, invisible but utterly palpable. It feels like a thunderclap with no sound, a pressure that shoves against their small bodies and makes the very stone beneath their feet tremble. The torches in their wrought iron sconces don't just gutter, they explode into frantic, roaring columns of flame that leap toward the ceiling before snuffing out completely, plunging the corridor into a darkness broken only by the faint, frantic glow of the elves' own protective magic. The air crackles with ozone and the scent of hot metal, and a deep, discordant hum vibrates in their teeth and bones. Then the chaos truly begins. The suits of armor lining the corridor, silent and imposing for hundreds of years, shudder violently as the wave of wild magic crashes over them. With a screech of protesting metal that grates against the ears, they lurch into a jerky, terrifying animation. There is no purpose or order to their movement. This is not a defensive charm or a guardian's duty. This is pure, chaotic malfunction. A gauntleted fist smashes into the stone wall, sending chips flying. A helmeted head twists completely around on its gorget with a sound of grinding steel. They stagger and clank into one another and the walls, their greatswords and maces swinging in wide, uncontrolled, and deadly arcs. They are not attacking the elves. They are simply lost in a violent, magical seizure, becoming immense, unpredictable obstacles in the narrow corridor, blocking the path forward and cutting off any easy retreat. The danger is immediate and physical, a far cry from the eerie chills and whispered warnings that came before. For a heart-stopping moment, pure, unadulterated panic threatens to overwhelm them. But the training of a lifetime, the ingrained instinct to protect and mend their home, kicks in a split second later. They don't freeze, they don't flee. They act as one. Together now, the calming weave, old Mimsy's voice rasps out, surprisingly steady and firm, cutting through the cacophony. It is not a spell from a textbook, but an old piece of house elf magic, a collective charm of peace and order, used to soothe magical overloads in the kitchen hearths, or to gentle a magical creature in distress. As one, the four elves raise their small hands, not with wands, but with focused intent. They don't shout incantations. They hum, a low, harmonizing note that seems to pull the very magic from their cores, weaving it together into a visible, shimmering net of soft golden light. They work in perfect, wordless sync, a testament to their years of shared labor. Wispy directs the shimmering net toward the legs of a suit of armor that is stomping dangerously close, tangling its metallic feet and causing it to crash harmlessly to the floor in a clatter of steel. Tilly, with her incredible nimbleness, darts through the forest of swinging limbs, her part of the weaving magic targeting the weapons, softening the metal of a swinging mace so it passes through a wall like smoke before solidifying again. Wispy and Mimsy focus on the epicenter of the magical surge itself, their combined will pushing the golden net of calming energy toward the roiling knot of wild power, trying to contain it, to smooth its ragged edges back into the harmonious flow of the castle's magic. It is a desperate, draining effort, and the chaotic magic fights back, lashing out like a wild animal. In the midst of this controlled chaos, as Wispy strains to reinforce a weakening section of their magical net, a splinter of the wild magic, a sharp, crystalline shard of pure force, breaks free from the main surge. It isn't aimed, it is simply released, a piece of the explosion flying off at a random, violent angle. It moves too fast to see, a distortion in the air. It strikes Wispy on the side of her arm with a sound like a snapped twig and a burst of searing pain that makes her cry out, a short, sharp gasp that is swallowed by the noise. The force of it spins her around, and she stumbles, clutching her arm. It's not a deep cut, but it is a burn and a bruise all at once, a painful, angry red mark that throbs in time with her racing heartbeat. For a moment, the golden light from her hands flickers dangerously. The injury is small, but but its significance is immense. It is the first real, physical proof of the danger they are in. This isn't an abstract threat or a ghost story anymore. The castle's malfunctioning magic can hurt them. It can draw blood. The pain is a sharp, cold shock that cuts through the adrenaline, a brutal reminder of their vulnerability. As Mimsy quickly moves to her side, her own weaving never faltering, adding her strength to cover Wispy's momentary lapse, the reality of their situation crashes down with far more force than the wild magic ever could. They are small, they are fragile, and they are facing powers that are rapidly spiraling beyond control. This event in the dungeon isn't an isolated incident, it is an escalation. A warning: if the foundational magic is now erupting with enough force to animate solid metal and lash out physically, then the clock is ticking down far faster than they had feared. The need to find the amulet is no longer urgent. It is critical, a race against a cascade of failures that could next time do more than just leave a bruise. It could bring a ceiling down or turn a charming, moving staircase into a deadly trap. The small injury on Wispy's arm becomes a symbol, a painful mandate that fuels their resolve with a fresh, sharp-edged dose of fear. They have to succeed, and they have to do it now. The warmth and gentle, earthy scent of the Hufflepuff common room is a balm to Wispy's frazzled nerves after the terrifying chaos of the dungeons. Here, nestled deep within the castle near the kitchens, the air is always comfortably warm, smelling of dried herbs, baking, and the rich, loamy soil from the many magical plants that thrive in every nook and windowsill. Low, rounded doorways lead to cozy dormitories, and plump, yellow, and black-patterned armchairs are arranged in inviting clusters around a magnificent, honey-colored stone hearth. It is a place that radiates safety, comfort, and unwavering loyalty, a stark contrast to the cold, metallic violence of the wild magic surge. For Wispy, tasked with giving the flagstones a final polish before the students return from dinner, it feels like a return to the normal, orderly world she is fighting so hard to protect. She works with a quiet, methodical rhythm, her small cloth moving in slow, circular patterns over the cool stone, the familiar motion a small comfort. The pain in her arm is a dull, persistent ache, a constant reminder of the stakes. But here, surrounded by the gentle hum of Hufflepuff's inherent magic, the panic begins to recede. Her focus is entirely on her task, on restoring order and shine to this small corner of her home. It is this hyper-focused attention to detail that saves her. As she works her way around the broad base of the hearth, her cloth snags on what seems to be a simple, insignificant irregularity in one of the larger hearthstones. It's a tiny, almost invisible lip, a hairline crack that doesn't quite match the others. Anyone else would have dismissed it as a natural flaw in the rock, but a house elf's hands are trained to feel every imperfection, every speck of dust, every whisper of a surface. Pausing her work, she runs her sensitive fingertips over the spot. It isn't a crack, it's a seam, a perfectly crafted, nearly invisible seam, hidden for centuries by soot and the general wear of countless feet. Her heart, which had finally begun to settle, gives a sudden, hard thump against her ribs. With a careful, deliberate pressure, she presses on one edge of the stone. For a breathless second, nothing happens. Then, with a soft, gritty click that is deafening in the quiet room, a small, rectangular section of the hearthstone silently slides inward and then pivots upward, revealing a shallow, dust-filled compartment hidden within the rock itself. Inside, protected from the heat and the years, lies a single, tightly rolled scroll of parchment, yellowed with age, but otherwise perfectly preserved. Her hands tremble only slightly as she lifts it out. The parchment is dry and brittle, but it unrolls easily, revealing not words, but a map. It is a beautifully detailed, hand-drawn diagram of the Hogwarts dungeons, but it depicts corridors and rooms that are not on any modern blueprint. This is a map of a forgotten level, a secret warren of passages that seem to weave behind and beneath the ones everyone knows. And there, in a small, circular chamber, marked with a series of intricate, protective runes, is a sketched symbol that makes her breath catch in her throat. A small, stylized amulet, identical to the one described in the Forbidden Book. An arrow points to its location, and next to it, written in a neat, precise script, are two words that drain the warmth from the room: Chamber's Threshold. She doesn't need the book to understand what that means. The amulet's last known resting place is in the entrance area of the Chamber of Secrets. A cold dread, colder than any dungeon chill, washes over her. The Chamber of Secrets is not just a dangerous place. It is a legend wrapped in fear, a story of ancient evil, petrification, and a monster that once terrorized the school. Even its general location is spoken of in hushed, fearful tones by the older portraits and ghosts. To go anywhere near it is to venture into a part of the castle's history that is best left undisturbed. The map itself seems to acknowledge this. Scattered along the suggested route are tiny, ominous sketches, a pressure plate, a false wall that likely triggers something unpleasant, a corridor marked with a symbol for falling rocks. This is not a simple path. It is a gauntlet, a series of traps designed to deter any and all from reaching the amulet's hiding place. The guardians the book warned about are not just living sentinels. They are also mechanical and magical safeguards, a final, deadly layer of protection. This discovery, this miraculous clue, instantly becomes a terrifying burden. She stands there, the ancient map held in her hands, feeling its immense weight. She has the answer. She knows where to go. Now she faces a choice that feels impossible. Should she go now, immediately, while the common room is empty and the path is clear? The urge is powerful. Every second they wait is another second for the castle's magic to erupt again, perhaps more violently next time. Her sense of responsibility screams at her to act, to run toward the danger and fix it, to prove her worth by facing this alone and sparing her friends further risk. The image of the wild magic lashing out, of the suits of armor swinging their deadly weapons, fuels this desperate impulse. She cannot let Bippy, Tilly, or dear old Mimsy face the traps hinted at on this map. The responsibility is hers. She found the map. She started this. To lead them into that kind of peril feels like a betrayal of their trust. But then she looks down at the throbbing mark on her arm, the physical proof of what happens when they are not prepared, when they are caught off guard. Going alone into a trapped labyrinth near the most infamous dark artifact in Hogwarts history isn't bravery, it is folly. It is a sure way to become another lost secret of the castle, a cautionary tale no one would ever hear. She thinks of her friends, of Tilly's nimbleness that could spot a pressure plate, of Bippy's vast knowledge of the castle's nooks that might help them navigate, of Mimsy's ancient wisdom that could decipher the old magic of the traps. Their strength is in their unity, as Helga Hufflepuff herself advised. To go alone would be to reject that strength, to let her fear of leading them into danger ironically guide her into a far more dangerous solo act. Waiting for nightfall, when the castle sleeps and they can move together as a team, is the smarter, safer plan. But safe is a relative term when the destination is the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, and every moment of delay feels like a gamble with the structural integrity of the entire school. Her fear for her friends battles her fear of inaction, a tumultuous war waged in her heart as she stares at the map, a document that offers both salvation and a potential path to disaster. The last echoes of the day finally fade from the stone corridors as the great clock in the entrance hall tolls a deep, resonant midnight. Hogwarts is asleep. The usual tapestry of sounds, the murmur of students, the creak of staircases, the distant chatter of portraits, has been replaced by a profound, watchful silence, broken only by the occasional soft snore from a suit of armor or the skittering of a mouse in the walls. It is in this heavy quiet that four small shapes detach themselves from the deeper shadows near the kitchens. Wispy, Bippy, Tilly, and Mimsy move as one, a coordinated unit of purpose and intent. They do not speak, they do not need to. With a shared, focused thought, they draw upon their unique magic, the innate power of beings bound to a place. A subtle shimmer passes over them, not quite invisibility, but a bending of light and sound around their forms, making them indistinguishable from the shifting darkness and the long, mooncast shadows. Their bare feet make no sound on the cold flagstones, their passage marked by nothing more than a slight stirring of the air. They are ghosts in their own home, moving with a silence that feels both protective and profoundly lonely. This is no simple stroll through familiar halls. Their route is a carefully planned web of back passages, abandoned classrooms, and shortcut corridors known only to the castle's most humble caretakers. Wispy leads, her large eyes wide, every sense stretched to its limit. She listens not just for sounds, but for the absence of them, for the telltale creak of a floorboard that signals someone else is awake, for the soft meow of Mrs. Norris that could spell disaster, for the gruff muttering of Argus, Filch on his rounds. Every closed door is a potential threat. Every corner is a moment of held breath. They freeze as one as Peeves, the poltergeist, drifts through a ceiling above them, cackling softly to himself, and they press themselves into the stone as the nearly transparent form of the fat friar glides past, humming a cheerful hymn. The danger of discovery is a constant, cold pressure in Wispy's chest. It isn't just the fear of punishment that drives her caution. It is the knowledge that if they are caught, the mission fails. The amulet remains lost, and the castle continues its slow unraveling. The weight of that responsibility rests squarely on her small shoulders, and with every silent step, her leadership is tested not in grand speeches, but in these countless, tiny decisions that keep them safe and unseen. The air begins to change long before they reach their destination. The comfortable, familiar magic of the upper floors, the warmth of the Gryffindor Tower, the intellectual buzz near the library, the earthy comfort of the Hufflepuff basement, all of it gradually falls away. The stone around them grows older, damper, smelling less of polish and torch smoke, and more of wet rock, deep earth, and something else, something metallic and ancient. like old coins in cold forge fire. The temperature drops noticeably, a chill that seeps through their thin tunics and settles in their bones. This is a part of Hogwarts that time, Chinese letter to have forgotten, a place of foundational stone and primal enchantments. The very atmosphere feels thick, heavy with the weight of centuries and the potent, slumbering magic of the castle's deepest foundations. The air hums with a low, sub-audible frequency that vibrates in their teeth, a constant, unnerving reminder that they are walking on ground steeped in power and history. This is no longer just a journey through a castle. It is a descent into its very heart, and the heart is old and cold. They finally pause at the mouth of a particularly narrow, descending corridor. The map clutched in Wispy's hand indicates this is the final approach, the last stretch before they reach the antechambers that border the legendary Chamber of Secrets. The darkness here is absolute, swallowing the weak light from the floating orbs they dare to conjure. Moisture beads on the walls, glittering like black eyes in the magical light, and the silence is so complete they can hear the frantic, synchronized beating of their own hearts. This is it, the point of no return. Wispy turns to look at her friends, her companions. She sees the same fear she feels reflected in their large, luminous eyes, the fear of the unknown, the fear of the chamber's dark reputation, the fear of the traps that undoubtedly lie ahead. But she also sees something else, trust, a steadfast, unwavering faith in her, in their shared purpose, in their collective strength. They are afraid, but they are not hesitating. They are waiting for her lead. In that moment, standing on the threshold of the deep unknown, Wispy understands what true leadership means. It isn't about being unafraid. It is about moving forward even when you are terrified, because others are counting on you, and because the goal is more important than the fear. She takes a final, steadying breath, the cold, heavy air filling her lungs. She gives a single, firm nod, a gesture that says everything. I am scared too, but we are together. We can do this. Then, squaring her small shoulders against the immense, pressing weight of the ancient magic all around them, she takes the first step into the dripping darkness of the final corridor, guiding her friends toward a fate that could either save their world or leave them lost to it forever. The final stretch of corridor opens not into another tunnel, but into a vast, circular cavern, so immense that the faint light from their floating orbs cannot hope to reach the distant, domed ceiling overhead. The air here is not just cold, it is utterly still and heavy, thick with the scent of deep earth and a profound, ancient silence that feels like a physical weight. The ground beneath their feet is smooth, worn stone, and in the very center of the cavern rises a dais, upon which sits a single, massive form. It is a gargoyle, but unlike any that decorates the castle's rain spouts. Carved from the same dark, primordial rock as the cavern itself, it is twice the height of a man and possesses a formidable, bestial majesty. Its features a blend of lion and eagle, with powerful, folded wings and claws that look capable of shearing through solid granite. It sits in perfect, absolute stillness, not as a statue does, but as something deeply and powerfully asleep, a slumber that has lasted for centuries. This is no mere decoration. It is a sentinel, and the air around it hums with a dormant energy that makes the hairs on the back of Wispy's neck stand on end. As the four elves approach, their silent footsteps, the only sound in the immense quiet, the humming energy in the air suddenly intensifies. coalescing into a visible, shimmering barrier of golden light that springs up between them and the dais, blocking their path completely. At the same moment, a deep, grinding rumble echoes through the cavern, a sound of stone moving against stone that has not been heard in 1,000 years. The great gargoyle begins to stir. Its head, which had been bowed as if in eternal contemplation, lifts with a gritty, slow deliberation. Then, with a sound like cracking shale, its eyelids open, revealing not stone orbs, but pools of molten, golden light that fix upon the small intruders with an intelligence that is both ancient and terrifyingly immediate. The guardian is awake, and its presence is a wave of pure, undiluted power that washes over them, forcing them to take a step back, their hearts hammering in their chests. A voice fills the cavern, but it does not come from a mouth. It resonates directly in their minds, a deep, sonorous tone that feels like the mountain itself is speaking, each word vibrating in their bones and echoing in the deepest parts of their souls. Halt, this is a place of keeping, not a finding. You tread where your kind has not been welcome for an age. The heart of the castle is not a trinket for the curious. State your purpose, small ones, or be returned to the light from whence you came. The threat is not spoken in anger, but with the calm, implacable certainty of an immutable law. This being is not evil. It is a fundamental part of Hogwarts' oldest magic, and it will simply enforce its purpose, erasing their presence if they are found unworthy. The sheer, monumental power it radiates is overwhelming, a force of nature given form, and for a terrifying moment, all 4 elves are frozen, not just by fear, but by a sense of their own profound insignificance in the face of such ancient might. Wispy and Tilly instinctively shrink back, their hands clutched together, while old Mimsy simply bows her head low, a gesture of deep respect for the power before them. The Guardian's molten gaze sweeps over them, and it is Wispy who feels its focus settle most heavily upon her. It is not looking at their physical forms, it is looking through them, seeing the tapestry of their intentions, their fears, their deepest desires. It is searching for a flaw, for a hint of greed, ambition, or deceit. The pressure of that scrutiny is immense, a weight that threatens to crush her spirit. She thinks of the fear that has been her constant companion, the fear of punishment, the fear of failure, the fear of the dark, cold corridors. For a heartbeat, she is certain the Guardian will see only that, a small, trembling creature motivated by terror, and it will dismiss them, and all will be lost. But then, something shifts within her. The fear is still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it is suddenly surrounded by something brighter, something stronger and far more powerful. It is the memory of why she is here. It isn't for glory or for reward. It isn't even to prove her courage. It is for the first year Gryffindor, who trips over his own robes and whose glasses she mends with a snap of her fingers before he even notices they are broken. It is for the warmth of the kitchens and the sound of her friends' laughter. It is for the feeling of the castle's stones under her hands, stones she has polished with care for years, stones that feel like home. It is a love for Hogwarts that is so deep, so intrinsic to her being, that it is more a part of her than her own heartbeat. This love is not loud or boastful. It is quiet, constant, and utterly selfless. It is the purity of a heart that asks for nothing in return for its devotion. And so, when the Guardian's voice booms again in their minds, proof is required. not of power, but of purpose. Show me the heart that seeks to mend, not to possess. It is Wispy who takes a small, hesitant, but ultimately unwavering step forward. She does not speak. Instead, she closes her large eyes, pushes her own fear aside, and opens her mind, offering up not an argument or a plea, but a single, crystalline memory. It is a simple moment, one of thousands like it. A cold, rainy night, and she is in the hospital wing, having noticed that Madame Pomfrey's stores of pepper-up potion were running low. Without being asked, without any thought of recognition, she had spent hours after her own duties were finished, quietly and meticulously organizing the supply closet, restocking the clean linens, and ensuring a steaming cup of tea was waiting for the matron when she returned from tending to a student. There was no one to see her, no one to thank her. The only reward was the quiet satisfaction of a job done well, of knowing she had made the castle and the people in it just a little bit safer, a little bit more comfortable. She offers this memory to the Guardian, this perfect, selfless snapshot of her devotion. For a long, agonizing moment, there is only silence. The golden barrier continues to shimmer. The gargoyle's luminous eyes remain fixed upon her. Then the immense stone creature slowly, deliberately, inclined its great head. The voice that fills their minds now is different. The booming judgment is gone, replaced by a tone of deep, resonant respect, like a low bell tolling approval. The smallest hands often hold the greatest love. The magic of service is the oldest magic of all. It is pure. It is accepted. As the words fade, the shimmering golden barrier simply dissolves into a shower of harmless, fading sparks. The path to the dais is clear. The Guardian does not move again, but its head bows once more, the molten light in its eyes dimming to a soft, warm glow. Its watchful sleep resumed. The test is over. They may pass. The relief that floods through Wispy is so powerful, it makes her knees feel weak. But it is more than relief. It is a profound, soul-deep validation. The Guardian did not judge her on her status, her size, or her power. It judged her on her heart, on the quality of her love for her home. In that moment, every ounce of her former fear, the fear of being inadequate, of being just a house elf, is burned away in the warmth of that acceptance. She is not a background character in the story of Hogwarts. She is a vital thread in its very fabric, and her quiet, selfless devotion is a magic as powerful as any spell. This realization is her true transformation. She entered this cavern, a scared elf leading a desperate mission. She leaves the Guardian's presence as a recognized protector, her courage forged in the fires of ancient magic and found worthy. The emotional stakes are no longer just about saving the castle. They are about living up to the truth the Guardian saw in her, a truth she now fully believes in herself. The path ahead is still dark and unknown, but she walks it with a new, unshakable certainty in who she is and why she must succeed. Beyond the Guardian's dais, the cavern narrows once more into a short, natural stone tunnel that ends not in another chamber, but in a deep, shadowy alcove carved directly into the rock face. It is a space so small and secluded, it feels less like a room and more like a secret whispered into the mountain's ear. The air here is different from the vast cavern behind them. It is calmer, stiller, but thrumming with a soft, persistent energy that raises the fine hairs on Wispy's arms. The walls of the alcove are covered in more of those ancient, angular runes, but these are not glowing with the same urgent, pulsating light she saw in the first hidden passage. Instead, their silver luminescence is faint and unsteady, flickering like a candle guttering in its final moments. It is a light that speaks of exhaustion, of a great power slowly bleeding away. And in the very center of this failing light, resting on a simple pedestal of uncut stone, is the source of it all. The Amulet of Harmony is both smaller and more magnificent than she had imagined from the book's description. It is not a gaudy piece of jewelry, but a work of profound, understated power. The celestial bronze is dark and smooth, shaped into a simple, circular frame, no larger than a galleon. At its center, held within the bronze embrace, is the moonstone. It is perfectly clear, like a droplet of captured water, and deep within its heart, a soft, ethereal light swirls and pulses in a slow, gentle rhythm, like a sleeping breath. Tiny, almost imperceptible threads of golden, silver, crimson, and amber light, the mingled essences of the four founders, swim within the stone, intertwining and separating in a silent, eternal dance. It is beautiful, but its beauty is marred by the evidence of its long absence. From the amulet itself, tiny, hairline cracks of distorted magic, like heat haze on a summer road, shimmer in the air. These are the magical leaks the Grey Lady spoke of, the visible symptoms of the castle's sickness. Every few seconds, a small, silent burst of unstable energy, like a minuscule electrical spark, fizzes from the amulet's surface and vanishes into the air, a testament to the protective lattice fraying at its edges. A reverent hush falls over the four elves. They have found it. The object of their desperate search is right before them, radiating a power that is both awe-inspiring and deeply fragile. Old Mimsy lets out a soft, shaky breath, her wrinkled hand coming to rest over her heart. Bippy and Tilly simply stare, their large eyes wide with a mixture of triumph and terror. Wispy feels it before she even moves, a resonance, a pull, the unique, humble magic that flows through her, the magic of service and care, seems to recognize the amulet's purpose. It isn't a call of domination or command. It is a harmonic vibration, like two identical notes struck on different instruments, finally finding each other. The amulet's power does not feel alien or threatening. It feels like coming home, like the final piece of a puzzle she never knew she was trying to solve. This connection, this innate understanding, pushes her forward. Her approach is one of instinctual caution. She knows better than to simply snatch the artifact. This is a thing of immense, delicate power, and it must be treated with the same reverence she would show a sleeping child. She moves slowly, her small hands held out before her, not in a gesture of taking, but of offering. She lets her own magic, that soft, golden energy of intent and care, flow from her fingertips first, creating a gentle field around her hands. It is her way of introducing herself, of showing the amulet her purpose is pure. As her hands get closer, the tiny, chaotic sparks of leaking magic seem to calm slightly, soothed by the steady, harmonious frequency of her own power. When her fingers finally make contact with the cool, smooth surface of the celestial bronze, there is no shock, no burst of energy. There is only a deep, profound sense of rightness, a gentle warmth that spreads up her arms and settles in her chest, a silent acknowledgement. The amulet knows her, it accepts her. With painstaking care, she lifts it from its stone cradle. It is lighter than she expected, and it feels alive in her hands, humming with a potential that has been dormant for far too long. For one perfect, heart-stopping second, there is only silence and the soft, swirling light within the moonstone. They have done it. They have succeeded. And then, the consequence of its removal arrives. The moment the amulet leaves the pedestal, the already flickering runes on the alcove walls blaze with a final, desperate silver light, and then snuff out completely. The silence is shattered by a sound that is not a sound, but a pure wave of magical force that erupts from the now empty pedestal. It is a high, piercing keen that seems to tear through the very fabric of the air, a psychic alarm that bypasses the ears and screams directly into the mind. It echoes off the stone walls, not fading as it travels, but growing, amplifying, shooting up the tunnel, through the Gargoyle's cavern, and out into the corridors beyond. A clarion call of violation that is undoubtedly heard across the entire magical spectrum of the castle. The effect is instantaneous and paralyzing. The 4 elves freeze, their moment of triumph vaporized by the sheer, terrifying volume of the alarm. They can feel it vibrating in their teeth, rattling their bones. It is a sound that screams thief and intruder and breach of trust all at once. In the distance, far above them, they hear a new, more immediate sound answering the call. The raised, frantic voice of Argus Filch, followed by the sharp yowl of his cat, Mrs. Norris. They have been discovered. Panic, cold and sharp, lances through Wispy. Every instinct screams at her to run, to clutch the amulet to her chest and flee back into the darkness, to use every trick of stealth they possess to escape the coming pursuit. The amulet is the priority. Getting it to safety is all that matters. To hesitate is to be caught, and to be caught is to fail. But as she turns to run, her eyes catch the empty pedestal. From it, the wild, unstable magic is no longer leaking in small sparks. Without the amulet's calming presence to even partially contain it, it is now erupting in a continuous, visible geyser of chaotic energy. The very stone of the alcove begins to crack and flake away under the assault. This isn't just an alarm, it's a catastrophic magical feedback loop. If they simply run, this unchecked eruption could destabilize this entire section of the foundation. It could cause a cave-in, or worse, send a tsunami of wild magic flooding through the lower corridors that would make the animated suits of armor look like a harmless prank. They might escape with the amulet, only to have the castle suffer a devastating magical injury the moment they leave. The choice is upon her in a split second, a torturous dilemma with no clear answer. Flee immediately and save the amulet, but potentially doom the castle to immediate, structural magical damage, or stay and try to contain this violent reaction, risking capture and the loss of everything they've fought for, but potentially preventing a disaster. The fate of Hogwarts hangs on the decision of one small, terrified elf. The screaming alarm, a relentless countdown to catastrophe. The psychic scream of the alarm is still vibrating in the air, a high, piercing note of pure violation, when the first cackle echoes down the stone tunnel behind them. It is a sound of manic, unadulterated joy at the prospect of chaos, and it is followed by a voice that every resident of Hogwarts knows and dreads. Ooh, what's this? What's this? Little elves where they oughtn't to be. Thieves in the night. Privacy knows, privacy sees. The poltergeist materializes not from the tunnel, but from the ceiling itself, dropping through the solid rock like a ghostly jack in the box, his bell-covered hat jingling merrily, His wide, malicious grin is a slash of light in the gloom, and he immediately begins zooming in frantic circles around their heads, his passage stirring up clouds of ancient dust. Alert, alert, intruders in the deep down, naughty little nibblers, stealing from the castle's sleep. Panic, cold and sharp, lances through the group. Peeves is not just a nuisance, he is a catastrophe in the making. His one purpose is to cause trouble, and nothing would delight him more than getting them caught, especially by his good friend, the caretaker. He doesn't care about the amulet or the fate of the castle. He only cares about the glorious upheaval their capture would cause. Filch, Filch, come and see. Come and see the little elves a-thieving, he shrieks, his voice magically amplified, bouncing off the stone walls and shooting up the passageway toward the rest of the castle. Every shout is a hammer blow to their chances of escape. They can't outrun a being who can fly through walls, and they certainly can't reason with him. Their carefully maintained cloak of stealth is torn to shreds by his joyful, echoing alerts. Wispy's mind races, the precious, humming weight of the amulet in her hands, a constant reminder of what is at stake. They need a distraction, something that will appeal to Peeves's singular, childish nature. Fighting him is impossible, tricking him is their only hope. And then, in a flash of desperate inspiration, she remembers Peeves has a notorious, overwhelming weakness for two things, chaos and sweets. The former he is already providing himself, the latter is their key. Tilly, your pocket, the lemon drops, she hisses, her voice tight with urgency. Tilly, ever prepared for a long night's work, always carried a small pouch of lemon drops to keep her energy up. Without a second's hesitation, Tilly pulls out the small cloth bag and tosses it to Wispy. Wispy doesn't throw the whole bag, that would be over too quickly. Instead, with a deftness born of 1,000 precise tasks, she loosens the drawstring, and as Peeves zooms past on another screaming circuit, she shakes out a single, yellow, sugar-dusted lemon drop. It clatters onto the stone floor right in his path. Peeves screeches to a halt in midair, his head spinning a full 360 degrees. Ooh. A tribute, he snatches the sweet from the floor, popping it into his mouth with a loud crunch. Sour, zingy, peevesy once more. His attention is momentarily, beautifully diverted from shouting alarms to tracking the source of the treat. It's their only chance. Go, 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 Wispy whispers fiercely, and they break into a run, not back the way they came past the slumbering guardian, but down a side tunnel Bippy insists is a shortcut. As they run, Wispy creates a trail of delicious breadcrumbs, shaking out a lemon drop every few yards, placing them on obvious ledges and in the center of the path. Behind them, they can hear Peeves's delighted shrieks, fading slightly as he stops to collect each sugary offering, his shouts of filch replaced by happy mutters of mine. Another for Peevesy. It is a brilliant, quick-thinking diversion, a masterstroke of understanding one's opponent, but it has come at a terrible cost: noise. The damage is already done. Peeves's initial, magically amplified alerts have pierced the deep silence of the lower dungeons and traveled upwards, a siren call to the one person who lives for catching students, and now elves out of bed. They are barely halfway up the narrow shortcut, their lungs burning with the effort of the steep climb, when a new sound freezes the blood in their veins. It is not the cackle of a poltergeist, but the gruff, angry bellow of a man, echoed by the high, eager yowl of a cat. I hear you, you little devils. Think you can sneak about my castle? Think again. I'm coming for you, Argus Filch. And he sounds closer than they could have ever feared. The game has changed utterly. They are no longer just stealthy retrievers on a secret mission. They are now fugitives, actively being hunted by the castle's caretaker. The amulet, once their salvation, now feels like a blazing beacon, announcing their guilt to anyone who finds them. The urgency is a physical thing now, a sharp-toothed animal snapping at their heels. Every shadow seems to hold Filch, his squinting eyes. Every echo of their own frantic footsteps sounds like Mrs. Norris's pattering paws. Their success no longer depends on bravery or ancient magic. It hinges on the very basics of their existence: absolute stealth and perfect teamwork. They move as a single organism, a four-part creature of silence and shadow. Wispy takes the lead, his incredible knowledge of the castle's lay out, allowing him to choose the most obscure, forgotten routes: a tapestry with a hidden gap, a chute once used for laundry, a narrow servant's staircase behind a painting of a bowl of fruit. Tilly, the smallest and most nimble, acts as their scout, darting ahead to every corner, peeking around and signaling with a subtle flick of her hand whether the path is clear or they must freeze. And they freeze often. They press themselves into icy cold alcoves as Filch, his limping gait and furious muttering, pass by just feet away, separated only by a thin wall of stone. They hold their breath as the light of his lantern slices through the darkness of a corridor they are about to cross. Old Mimsy, though slower, uses her deep well of ancient magic, not for speed, but for misdirection, whispering tiny, subtle charms that make a distant door creak or a suit of armor rattle, pulling Filch, his attention away from their actual path, just long enough for them to slip by. Wispy, clutching the amulet to her chest, feels its gentle pulse against her skin, a constant, calming rhythm amidst the storm of fear. She is the heart of their operation, making the split-second decisions, her eyes constantly checking on her friends, ensuring they are all together, all safe. The amulet's power is not just in stabilizing the castle. In this moment, its steady, harmonious hum stabilizes her, grounding her in their purpose and silencing the panicked voice in her head that screams they are about to be caught. They are a team, their individual strengths weaving together into a tapestry of escape, each thread vital, each moment a terrifying gamble where a single misstep, a single dropped sweet, or a single caught breath could mean the end of everything. The familiar warmth and bustling energy of the Hogwarts kitchens wash over them like a physical embrace, a stark and welcome contrast to the cold, fearful darkness of the dungeons. They collapse against the sturdy wooden tables, their small chests heaving, the frantic drumming of their hearts only just beginning to slow. The air, thick with the comforting sense of baking bread and simmering stew, has never felt so sweet. For a long moment, no one speaks. They simply breathe, taking stock of each other in the flickering firelight. Wispy leaning heavily on a flour sack, Tilly trembling as she wipes sweat from her brow, old Mimsy with her eyes closed, her lips moving in a silent prayer of thanks. And Wispy, still clutching the amulet of harmony to her chest, its celestial bronze cool and reassuring against her skin. They are safe. They are together. And they have succeeded, but the mission is not yet complete. Wispy's mind, though fogged with exhaustion, is already turning to the final, crucial step. The amulet hums in her hands, its power a steady, gentle thrum that feels both immense and fragile, like a sleeping dragon. It is home, but it is not yet in its home. The book was clear. It couldn't just be placed anywhere. It needed its anchor point, the specific locus of power for which it was created, and the Grey Lady's words, combined with the clues from the old map, paint a clear picture. The forgotten hearth isn't in some deep cavern. It is in the very heart of the castle, in plain sight. It is the enormous, rarely used secondary fireplace in the great hall, the one that sits opposite the staff table, often obscured by decorations and considered merely ornamental. Its flue doesn't lead to the skies above. According to the lore, it leads down, connecting directly to the foundational magical currents that flow beneath the castle's stones. That is where it must go. With a strength she doesn't know she still possesses, Wispy pushes herself upright. Her friends see the determined set of her jaw, and without a word, they too find their feet. The weariness is still there, a heavy weight in their bones, but it is now overshadowed by a final, collective resolve. They move through the silent kitchens as a single unit, a solemn procession, and slip into the vast, empty expanse of the great hall. The enchanted ceiling above shows a sky full of twinkling stars, and the long house tables sit silent and empty, adding to the profound, chapel-like quiet of the space. Their footsteps, though soft, seem to echo in the immense room as they approach the large, cold fireplace. The hearth is indeed forgotten, its grate clean but cold, its mantle carved with runes so old and smoothed, by time, they are nearly invisible. This is the place. Wispy approaches slowly, her reverence palpable. She doesn't simply set the amulet down. With the care of someone handling a newborn bird, she reaches into the fireplace and feels along the topmost stone of the interior back wall. Her sensitive fingers find what she is searching for, a small, perfectly amulet-shaped indentation, hidden for centuries in the soot and shadow. It fits exactly. As she presses the amulet of harmony into its rightful resting place, a soft, audible click resonates through the silent hall, a sound of something ancient and fundamental, finally settling back into its proper alignment. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then, a gentle, warm light begins to pulse from within the moonstone, growing steadily brighter, its rhythm slowing and deepening until it beats in a steady, calm tempo, like the heart of the castle itself. The light spills out from the hearth, not as a blinding flash, but as a soft, golden wave that rolls silently through the great hall. As it passes, the four elves feel it, a profound, tangible shift in the very air around them. The low, discordant hum of instability that had been a constant, barely perceptible background anxiety for days simply vanishes. It is replaced by a deep, resonant, and harmonious silence, a feeling of perfect peace and immense, unshakable stability. The magical disturbances haven't just been patched, they have been healed. The castle lets out a sigh of relief, so deep it seems to come from the stones themselves. The balance has been restored. The effort of the spell, of the entire harrowing night, crashes down upon them all at once. The golden light from the amulet dims to its intended, soft, steady glow, and as it does, the elves' own energy seems to extinguish with it. They sink to the floor where they stand, not in a heap, but with the slow, deliberate collapse of utter exhaustion. There is no energy left for celebration, only for the simple, overwhelming act of breathing. Wispy leans his head against a table leg, already half asleep. Tilly curls into a small ball, her eyes closed. Mimsy simply sits, her hands resting in her lap, a look of profound peace on her wrinkled face. Wispy remains on her knees before the hearth, staring at the gently pulsing amulet, its light reflecting in her wide, weary eyes. They have done it. They have saved their home. But in the quiet that follows the triumph, a new, cold thought begins to uncoil in the back of Wispy's mind, seeping through the warmth of her relief. The silence of the great hall is no longer just peaceful. It feels watchful. The enormity of what they have just done, the rules they have broken, the secrets they have uncovered, the places they have trespassed settles upon her shoulders with a heavier weight than any exhaustion. They were not asked to do this. They were not given permission. They acted on their own, driven by loyalty and love. But in the eyes of the faculty, would that love be enough to excuse the transgressions? Professor McGonagal's stern expression flashes in her memory, the headmaster's unwavering sense of order. They had triggered a powerful magical alarm, evaded the caretaker, and meddled with the most ancient and protected magic of Hogwarts. The amulet was safe, the castle was healing, but they 4 lowly house elves were now holders of immense, dangerous secrets. The consequences of their courage, should they be discovered, could be severe. The fear of punishment, a fear she had thought conquered in the Gargoyle's cavern, returns now, not as a sharp panic, but as a deep, chilling dread. They had restored balance to the castle, but in doing so, they may have irrevocably unbalanced their own safe, quiet place within it. The profound, healing silence of the great hall is broken not by a shout or a slam, but by the soft, precise click of a door opening. From the entrance behind the staff table, a figure emerges, her silhouette tall and unmistakable, even in the dim, starlit vastness of the room. Professor Minerva McGonagal, dressed not in her usual teaching robes, but in a tartan dressing gown, steps into the hall. Her expression is unreadable, a carefully schooled mask of stern authority, but her eyes are alight with a sharp, penetrating intelligence that misses nothing. She does not storm or rage. Her approach is measured, her footsteps echoing with a deliberate gravity that seems to amplify in the quiet space. She has not come by chance. The immense, soothing wave of magical stabilization that just washed through the castle's foundations was a sensation any powerful witch or wizard would feel in their very core, a sudden and profound righting of the world. For the deputy headmistress, it was a beacon, and it led her here. Wispy's heart, which had finally begun to settle into a steady rhythm, immediately seizes up again, a cold knot of pure dread forming in her chest. This is it, the moment she has feared since this all began. The other elves shrink back instinctively, their large eyes wide with terror, looking as though they wish they could melt into the stone floor. Wispy forces herself to stand, her legs trembling so violently she has to press her small hands against her knees to steady herself. She cannot run, she cannot hide. All she can do is face the consequences of her choices and hope that her love for the castle will be understood, even if her methods are not. Professor McGonagal stops a few feet away, her gaze sweeping over the scene. The 4 exhausted, dust-covered elves, the cold fireplace, and finally, coming to rest on Wispy herself. The amulet, now safely nestled in its ancient setting, pulses with a soft, steady light, casting a gentle glow on the professor's stern features. Wispy. The professor's voice is not loud, but it carries through the hall with the clarity of a bell, devoid of its usual warmth. Would you care to explain what is occurring here? And why the castle's foundational magic feels as though it has just weathered a significant recalibration? There is no accusation in her tone yet, only a demand for facts, but the implicit warning is clear. This is a transgression of the highest order, and the expectation of punishment hangs heavy in the air between them. For a terrifying moment, Wispy's mind goes blank, every carefully rehearsed explanation fleeing in the face of that unwavering gaze. The fear is paralyzing. She thinks of Filch's cells, of being dismissed, of being stripped of her home and her purpose, of bringing shame upon all the house elves. But as she looks into Professor McGonagal's eyes, she doesn't see malice. She sees a deep and serious concern for the safety of the school. She loves every bit as much as Wispy does. And in that shared love, Wispy finds a sliver of courage. She takes a small, shaky breath, and then she begins to speak. Her voice is quiet at first, a mere whisper, but it grows steadier as she goes on. She does not embellish or make excuses. She does not try to shift blame. She simply tells the truth. She speaks of the first chilling wrongness in the Gryffindor common room, the frightened whispers in the kitchens about missing food and scraping noises. She confesses to finding the hidden passage and its glowing runes, to her conversation with nearly headless Nick, and to her terrified but necessary audience with the Grey Lady. Her voice trembles when she admits to sneaking into the restricted section, her head bowing slightly in shame at the confession. She describes the book, the Amulet of Harmony, and the terrible, escalating consequences of its absence, the wild magic in the dungeons that animated the suits of armor and left the mark on her arm, which she shows to the professor now, a faint but still visible red wheal. She speaks of her conversation with Helga Hufflepuff's portrait and her decision to enlist her friends, not to lead them into rebellion, but to protect the home they all share. She tells of the map in the Hearthstone, the terrifying journey through the trapped corridors, the ancient guardian who judged her heart, and the final, desperate race to escape Peeves and Filch with their priceless, fragile prize. She holds nothing back. She lays every secret, every fear, every desperate choice at Professor McGonagal's feet. And when she is finally finished, she stands there, small and trembling, awaiting her fate. She expects anger. She expects a lecture on rules and boundaries, and the dangers of meddling in magic far beyond her station. She expects to be taken away. The silence that follows her story is longer and more agonizing than any she experienced in the dark tunnels. Professor McGonagal does not move. She simply stands, absorbing every word, her eyes never leaving Wispy's face. The stern mask has not fallen, but something in her eyes has shifted, softened at the edges. When she finally speaks, her voice is different. The cold, formal tone is gone, replaced by something warmer, laced with a respect that Wispy has never heard directed at her before. "I see," the professor says quietly, almost to herself. She glances at the amulet, its peaceful, rhythmic glow a testament to the truth of Wispy's tale. She looks at Bippy, Tilly, and Mimsy, who are still watching, frozen in fear. Then her gaze returns to Wispy, and this time it is filled with a new and startling emotion, admiration. Wispy, she begins again, and now her voice is clear and firm, carrying a weight of official acknowledgement. What you have done, the risks you have taken. She pauses, choosing her words with great care. You have acted with a bravery and a loyalty that would earn 100 points for any house in this school. You identified a threat that the staff had only begun to sense. You pursued it with relentless dedication despite your justifiable fear, and you sought knowledge and aid from the castle's oldest residents with a respect that speaks volumes of your character. You broke rules, it is true, serious rules. Her tone hardens for just a moment, a reminder of the line that was crossed, but you did not break them for mischief or for personal gain. You broke them for Hogwarts, and in doing so, you have quite possibly averted a catastrophe that would have taken us months, perhaps years, to fully understand and contain. The castle is in your debt. The words are so unexpected, so utterly contrary to everything Wispy had prepared herself for, that she can only stare, her mouth slightly agape, her mind struggling to catch up. Punishment, debt, the concepts cannot coexist. Professor McGonagal's expression finally softens fully into something akin to pride. The role of a house elf is one of service, Wispy. But service takes many forms. Sometimes it is polishing silver and mending robes, and sometimes, she says, her voice dropping to a more confidential tone, it is being the eyes and ears of the castle in places we cannot go, understanding its ancient rhythms in ways we cannot. The secrets you have uncovered, the connection you have forged with the castle's oldest magic, these are not things to be punished. They are things to be honored, and more importantly, they are things to be protected. She takes a step closer, her presence now not intimidating, but mentoring. Therefore, effective immediately, I am offering you a new role, should you choose to accept it. The role of a guardian of Hogwarts secrets, an unofficial title, to be sure, but a vital one. Your duties would be your own, guided by your unique connection to this place. You would monitor the ancient magic, watch for any further signs of instability, and serve as a custodian of the knowledge you have gained. You would report any grave concerns directly to the headmaster or myself, of course, but you would have our trust and our support to act as you see fit to protect the castle's heart. She looks at the other elves, including them in her gaze. All of you have proven that the smallest hands can hold the greatest power, the power of selfless love. That is a magic this school must never take for granted. The validation that washes over Wispy is so complete, so profound, it is dizzying. It is more than just being let off the hook. It is her entire journey. Her fear, her doubt, her courage, her love of being seen, understood, and not just accepted, but celebrated. The headmaster's warning, which had once filled her with such anxiety, is now a badge of honor. Her status hasn't just been spared, it has been utterly transformed. She is no longer just Wispy the house elf, a background fixture. She is Wispy, the elf who spoke with ghosts, who read a forbidden book, who faced an ancient guardian and passed its test, who saved the castle. She is a guardian, a protector, a recognized and vital thread in the tapestry of Hogwarts. The journey that began with a chill of fear ends here, in the warm glow of the Great Hall, with the sternest professor in the school, looking at her not as a servant, but as a partner. It is a transformation that redefines not only her future, but the very potential of every house elf who calls this magical castle home. The news of the quiet, extraordinary ceremony traveled through the castle not by proclamation, but through the whispering portraits and the pleased murmurs of the ghosts, a secret shared and celebrated by the very walls of Hogwarts itself. It was held not in the great hall with all its pomp, but in the headmaster's office, a place that felt both immensely powerful and intimately safe. The circular room was bathed in the soft, golden light of the setting sun, which streamed through the windows and caught the spinning silver instruments on their spindly tables, making them gleam. The portraits of previous headmasters and headmistresses were unusually alert and silent in their frames, their painted eyes watching the proceedings with keen interest and unmistakable approval. Professor McGonagal stood with a posture of stern pride, her hands clasped before her, while other key members of the staff, including a curiously attentive Professor Snape and a beaming Professor Flitwick, formed a small, respectful circle. And at the center of it all stood Albus Dumbledore, his usual twinkling eyes holding a gravity that made the air hum with significance, and before him, Wispy, feeling smaller than ever yet somehow standing taller than she ever had. Dumbledore did not speak of rules broken or of secrets stolen from the restricted section. Instead, his voice, warm and deep as a cello note, filled the room as he spoke of the unseen threads that hold a world together. He spoke of loyalty that goes beyond command, of courage that acts not in the absence of fear, but in defiance of it. He spoke of the unique, profound magic that exists not in a wand, but in a heart devoted to a place and its people. Hogwarts, he said, his gaze seeming to encompass every stone, every portrait, every sleeping portrait hole in the castle, is not merely a collection of ancient stone and powerful enchantments. It is a living, breathing entity, a symphony of magic whose most beautiful notes are often played by the quietest hands. He then turned his full attention to Wispy, and in that moment, she felt truly seen, not as a servant, but as a witch or wizard of equal standing in the defense of their shared home. He named her actions for what they were, not meddling, but guardianship, not disobedience, but the highest form of service. He then made the offer, his words formal yet filled with a deep, personal respect. He spoke of the new role, not as a burden to be assigned, but as a sacred trust to be bestowed. The castle has chosen its guardian as much as we have, he explained, a faint smile touching his lips. It whispered its distress to you, Wispy, because it knew you would listen. It knew you would answer. This is not a post we are creating for you. It is a truth we are acknowledging. He spoke of her new responsibility, to walk the halls with a new awareness, to listen to the whispers of the ancient magic, to monitor the pulse of the castle, and act as its early warning system against any future threats. She would be the bridge between the deep, old magic of the founders and the present-day life of the school, a custodian of secrets too vital to be recorded in any book. The silence that followed was immense, a held breath from every portrait and every person in the room. All eyes were on her. This was the pivotal moment, the choice that would define her path forever. She could, of course, refuse. She could return to the kitchens, to the familiar, comforting rhythm of polishing and cleaning, to a life of blessed anonymity. The fear of such immense responsibility was a cold, sharp stone in her stomach. She was just a house elf. Who was she to accept such a role? But as she stood there, she looked past Dumbledore to the window, where the first stars were beginning to appear over the Forbidden Forest. She thought of the chilling wrongness in the Gryffindor common room, of the terrified whispers about scraping in the cellar, of the terrifying, chaotic dance, of the animated suits of armor. She thought of the amulet, warm and steady in its hearth, and the profound, healing silence that had followed its return. Most of all, she thought of her friends Bippy, Tilly, Mimsy, and the unwavering solidarity in their eyes when she had asked for their help. They had shown her that her strength was not in being alone, but in being part of the whole. This new role would not separate her from them. It would allow her to better protect them, and all the elves, and every student who laughed and learned within these walls. The love she felt for Hogwarts, a love that had driven her into the darkness, now rose up, calm and solid and certain, pushing the last remnants of fear aside. This was not about being worthy in the eyes of wizards. It was about being true to the call she felt in her own soul. She looked up at Dumbledore, her large, luminous eyes clear and steady, and gave a single, firm nod. "I will," she said, her voice quiet but filled with a resonance that seemed to vibrate in harmony with the spinning silver instruments. "I will be its guardian." In that simple acceptance, the journey that had begun with a worried elf polishing trophies reached its magnificent culmination. The background servant was gone, replaced by a key protector, a recognized and essential defender of the castle. The portraits broke into quiet, respectful applause, some dabbing at their eyes with painted handkerchiefs. Professor McGonagal's stern expression softened into a look of deep pride, and even Professor Snape gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement. Wispy's place was no longer just in the heart of Hogwarts. She had become a part of that heart itself, a steady, watchful pulse, ensuring that the magic of the castle would remain safe, stable, and strong for all the generations of witches and wizards yet to come. The polished silver of the trophy gleams under her careful cloth, not with the anxious reflection of a worried elf, but with the steady, loving shine of a guardian tending to her home. Wispy's hands move with their familiar, precise rhythm, but everything else has changed. The weight of the castle's magic is no longer a distant, humming mystery. It is a constant, comforting presence she feels in her very bones, a deep and resonant chord of stability that she now knows she helped restore. Her bond with Hogwarts has been reforged in the fires of ancient magic and quiet courage, and it is deeper and more profound than she ever imagined possible. Where once she saw only her assigned tasks, she now sees the interconnected web of enchantment. They support every polished surface, a tiny mirror reflecting protective spells, every mended robe a stitch in the fabric of student safety, every prepared meal an act of nurturing the castle's vibrant life. Her purpose is renewed, not changed. It is elevated, infused with the profound understanding that her small, daily acts of service are not separate from her grand title as a guardian of secrets. They are the very foundation of it. In the warm, bustling heart of the kitchens, a new ritual has begun to unfold in the quiet hours after the evening meals are cleared. The younger elves, those who still jump at the sound of a dropped pan, and whose eyes go wide at the mere mention of Peeves, often gather around Wispy, their small faces tilted up in rapt attention. They no longer see just another older elf. They see a living legend, one of their own who spoke with ghosts, navigated forbidden sections, and faced down a magical sentinel carved from the mountain itself. And Wispy, her voice soft but steady, shares her stories. She does not boast of her bravery, She speaks of her fear and how she moved forward despite its cold grip. She tells them of the Grey Lady's sorrowful wisdom and nearly headless Nick's unexpected guidance, of how the castle itself will whisper its needs to those who learn to listen. She describes the immense, peaceful power of the Amulet of Harmony, not as a weapon, but as a symbol of unity, showing them that the magic of 4 founders working together is echoed in the magic of 4 elves working as one. In her words, their world expands. The endless stacks of dishes and sacks of potatoes are no longer just chores. They are part of a great and vital purpose. She inspires them to see their own roles not as mere servitude, but as a sacred, active participation in the protection and preservation of the only home they have ever known. High above in the headmaster's office, or deep within the staff room, the professors might discuss the stabilization of the castle's foundational enchantments, noting the absence of cold spots and the perfectly predictable movement of the staircases. But down in the kitchens and corridors, the house elves feel it in a different, more intimate way. The bread rises a little more evenly, the torches burn with a steadier flame, and the very air lacks that faint, unsettling tremor that had become so normal they'd almost stopped noticing it. The magic of Hogwarts remains stable, a calm and powerful sea upon which the vibrant life of the school safely sails. This hard-won piece is the legacy of Wispy's journey, a constant, silent testament to the fact that monumental change is not always heralded by thunderous battles or brilliant spellcraft. Sometimes it is ushered in by the quiet determination of the smallest beings, those who operate in the background, whose love for their home is so fierce and selfless that it moves them to perform acts of incredible courage. Of course, the castle is a living entity, ancient and full of secrets, and challenges will inevitably arise again. A portrait might report a strange draft in a previously sealed corridor, or the candles in the great hall might flicker in an odd rhythm one evening. But now, there is a new system in place, a new layer of protection. There is an elf who knows to feel for the texture of the magic in the air, who understands the language of faint, glowing runes, and who has the unwavering confidence to investigate, to gather her friends, and to act. Wispy's journey has irrevocably altered the ecosystem of Hogwarts, proving that courage and devotion are not qualities bound by stature or magical pedigree. Her legacy is not written on a trophy or a plaque. It is woven into the very atmosphere, a story passed from one generation of elves to the next, a permanent reminder that destiny is not a path laid out for us, but a tapestry we all weave together with every choice we make, no matter how small